Welcome everyone to another Unboxed pod, the Microsoft Unboxed official podcast, hosted by me, Cream Anderson, and
David Allen. Hope everybody out there's doing well. We're rolling into the holiday season, but that doesn't mean that news is short yet. So we've got a day full of news for you folks.
correct. We will be talking quite a bit about gaming this week. It is kind of our thing here on the pod. But we'll have some other news surrounding that. One of the stories we're talking about is Microsoft bringing back the MSN brand. Um, Older readers and viewers of our site might be wondering, when did it go away? Well, it went away for a little bit, but Microsoft's bringing it back. Younger people might not know what that means, so we'll have you both covered in that. We're also going to be talking about Stardock, which is a utility that allows people to customize Windows in the same way that I guess GoodLock is for those who have Samsung phones. You do all kinds of crazy stuff with it. They're coming out with their own AI. They're bringing a desktop version of it, and David seems to be a fan of it. He's going to get into why it's different than Copilot. We're also talking about the future of Xbox devices and potential handheld. Was at least acknowledged officially by head of Xbox Phil Spencer. We'll get into the details about that. We'll also be talking about Google being aware that their Tensor chip is not as performant as they would have liked it to have been, both from a financial standpoint and from a practical one. We'll also be talking about the Windows 11 mail and calendar app going away officially. I know Microsoft's threatened that for the last couple of years, but it seems like they're putting their foot down as of December. We'll get into those details. BlueSky is big news. If you look at any recent headline over the last week, all you see is user numbers increasing. And we'll talk about what that means potentially for the phase of social media with any kind of changes that may result from the shift of users. We'll also be talking lastly about Microsoft attempting to redefine the Xbox, what that means for us Xbox gamers and fans of the console in the future. Again, I've done a lot of talking. I'm going to let my buddy jump in on this and start us off with our first headline.
All right, let's see what we have. Number one here. Let's go ahead and go back in the past and talk about Microsoft bringing back the MSN brand. Now, just to give you some precursor, MSN goes back many years, decades actually. MSN used to be the name of the dial up service provider that Microsoft was. Now, some of you younger folks might not even know what dial up is or even know that Microsoft at one point was an internet service provider, and that's where Microsoft Network MSN came from. They had TV boxes where you could hook them up to your TV, hook them up to your phone line, surf internet on the TV. I had one of those boxes, and then when we all got high speed services, MSN kind of became kind of the start page for your Internet Explorers and where you got all your news when your browser came up. And they're bringing that back. Nobody really knew that it was coming back. Just a few days ago, people started realizing, hey, it doesn't say Microsoft Start anymore. So Microsoft says, oh, we better put out a press release about that and say, all right, we're bringing the MSN brand back. And they did not say whether they are rebranding the mobile apps yet or not. Those, as of this morning, I loaded up one. Those still say Microsoft Start. So we're going to have to wait and see what Microsoft has in mind for MSN branding. The only comment that I saw was, the typical PR statement. We are constantly evaluating customer wants, customer needs, and reevaluating our brand. And we thought bringing MSN back would be a good idea. So, for some of you old folks out there, kind of like myself and my buddy here, what are your thoughts on bringing MSN back? And for you younger folks out there, this is your first time seeing the MSN brand, it might not impact you as much. So To my buddy here, you have lived the MSN branding as long as I have. What are your thoughts?
I said it was a bad idea. You and I were just talking on mic about this. MSN has become a shorthand for, unfortunately, colloquially speaking, mainstream news.
Mm-hmm.
It's and that has a negative connotation in our current social and political structure. And to your point, it's not a service network anymore. It doesn't provide internet. People get that from their cable or from their phone carriers, whatever. So its existence doesn't make any sense to bring it back. If it's just Microsoft News, again, I don't know if it comes back as a trusted source. And especially, we've been covering stories over the last 3 years of them firing actual journalists and replacing them with AI. So, I mean, to trust the stories that come out of this, if that's a branding for Microsoft News, that's also another pivot. I don't think it's going to work. I just think that this is kind of a thing that doesn't necessarily need to exist in the Microsoft portfolio in the way that it's presented. If Microsoft wants to encourage people to read that like homepage on Explorer or whatever, or Edge, I'm sorry, on the that has the news filters and things like that, or if they put it down in the widget section, it needs to be an independent brand, not this old MSN brand. Maybe call it uh, I don't know, some other service per se, um, and then maybe run with it that way. Maybe MN Microsoft News, just like you have Apple News, to get rid of the SN part
Mm-hmm.
because it's just confusing and for older people. It doesn't serve the same purpose it did. So if you're an older person, like I'm going to get my internet service from Microsoft, you can't do that anymore. And if you're a younger person, you didn't know what it was to begin with. It coming up and cropping up, you already have your own news sources. You probably use some RSS feeder of your own. You probably have some subscription to newsletters or Substacks. You get your news from other sources, not Microsoft in general. You probably don't go to the widget section. So it just seemed like a weird resurgence. Now, it's nice for people like you and me in the group to talk about it. But other than that, I think it might be a wasted effort.
We'll see. I agree with you. Number one, MSN News, even when it was a news source and was had some of the value that it had back in the day, the news stories, I have to say, weren't always that great. Some of them were, and I know we get into right wing and left wing and all that good stuff these days that we, didn't as much back then. But back when MSN was a thing, some of the news stories that were up there, I got to say, you've never heard of before.
Yeah. So we will keep an eye on this. We'll report it if we get any more news about that. But other than that, we're going to move on to our next topic, which is Google being aware that its Tensor chip sucks. I'm paraphrasing. They didn't say that, but whenever I can dunk on Google, I like to. But I mean, all joking aside, anybody who's had um, the I don't know since the Pixel 6, I want to say, and then other Pixel tablets in between that have experienced the Tensor chip. And it is a very good chip. I'm glad that they're making their own custom chips. They're following Apple in this way. It's just that I think the learning curve is less forgiving for them. Apple has had, I think they're on the A16 now at this point. So they've had 16, 17 years to kind of, nail down this formula of performance chip. Google's on this is the Tensor 4, I think, or something like that. So they've got some growing pains and learning curves to get it across. But at least privately, they're acknowledging that the Tensor chip, not only does it run hot, it just costs them too much to produce. And its performance levels aren't meeting the thresholds that I believe it's the G chip team were aiming for. So just kind of go over the story that we covered, I think Android Authority had. They got their hands on some internal documents from, again, Google's G chip engineers that highlight the company's acknowledgement of its flagship processor underperforming, not only on devices, but internal metrics based on price and expectations for the chip. According to the documents reviewed by Android Authority, Google won't be rehauling its chip design anytime soon, unfortunately, to address any of this stuff. But they are looking to make a few small tweaks, rip out some stuff from the chip in order to meet some of those thresholds as far as heat's concerned, and performance. And they're looking to, I believe, move over to TSMC's manufacturing to cast a smaller die, which would also help them save uh, on the cost of making each individual chip. Um, some of the moves, in specific, Google wants to drop about 4% of its tensor die area. I think it's at 121 millimeters squared down to 105, which would put it on par with, again, we just mentioned Apple's I think it's A18 series chip now. And again, the smaller the die, the cheaper it will be to produce. Uh, Again, unfortunately, getting that small means that they're going to have to, again, take some of the stuff out of the chip that kind of uh, gave it its bullet points whenever they would have those, developer conferences screens. You'd see like, oh, the Tensor chip can do this, this, and this. One of the things they're to be taking out is the digital signal processor core to save space, and that'll be cutting out system level caching support for up to 4 MB. And I mean, they want to cut down the system level caching support from 8 MB to 4. So that'll have a little performance drop in that. And they also want to say goodbye to ray tracing. And again, I personally don't play any mobile games that I've sit back and go, oh man, this ray tracing on this mobile game is amazing. So I don't see that as a loss. I think that, it would have been nice to say, and I think Apple gets to continue to keep that crown, but I don't think at this point anybody's really getting any benefit from that. I don't know if they're going to be pulling out anything else from the chip as far as their AI is concerned. We always talk about TPUs and tops and all that kind of, NPUs and tops and things like that. I think that's still going to stay in place. But at least from those expectations, those are the other things they're pulling out. The other thing they want to do is they're aiming for a $65 target or less, which would make half the competitors' pricing for manufacturing chips, in order to make it cost worthy. Right now, they're kind of just eating the cost of putting these chips in and hoping to market it for future, brand recognition. So, what are your thoughts on where Tensor stands now, and what pulling out some things might have, if in fact that can make it better, or would it in the end make it worse overall?
Number one, I think it's expected that Google's behind. As you mentioned, they've not been making chips themselves as long as Apple. And I think what Google has done with these chips isn't all bad. I think the more efficient they are, fantastic. If removing something makes these chips more efficient, fantastic. And we're about to talk about this in another form and another story here in a minute. But I think at the end of the day, Google is a software company. That is what markets their devices. They are making these chips, number one, to keep from having to outsource from other people. And as you mentioned, they have less cost control that way. Making their own, they can have some sort of cost control, and they can look at what users are using, what users need, what the feedback is. And there's somebody sitting in the Google offices right now that have said, look, maybe our users don't need this powerhouse in our devices, that Apple makes, and Apple is always touting more power, more power, more power. Look what your device can do. I'm going to be the first to say I own a Google tablet. I do not own a Google phone, but I have experienced a Google phone and had a chance to use one for a couple of weeks in the past. For daily activities, the chips are okay. So maybe toning them down a little bit, making them more efficient, and letting Google do what Google does, drive that software that they're good at making to that phone, then things work a lot better. I'm a fan of what they're doing.
These chips are powerful enough to handle everyday tasks like browsing the web.
I'm hearing some feedback. Is that you or me?
I think that's you. I was thinking to say, I heard.
Excel at AI tasks, which means your Pixel phone will be great at things like
that's
language translation and image processing.
Is it?
World experience.
I hear a YouTube video somewhere.
So you know firsthand that it can handle daily activities.
Oh, guess what we did, folks? We turned on, I said the magic words. We might get a kick out of it. I said the magic words, and we started Gemini here. So Gemini was telling me all about the Google Tensor chip.
I think it wanted to defend itself. It jumped in and was like, hey, I hear you're bad mouthing me. Here's all the reasons why Tensor is great, guys. The AI is always listening, ladies and gentlemen, always listening, just waiting, listening and waiting. We'll wrap up this story. That was a nice way to end it, but I look forward to it. We had mentioned just a couple of the things that they did mention several times in the docs that Android Authority had. That battery performance is something that they are aware of and are keen to trying to optimize. Again, they said Tensor G5 and G6 won't have any dynamic or systematic changes to the chip itself, and that's probably because again these things have been years in the making in advance. But perhaps after the Tensor 6, you will get a whole different way that they process and manufacture the chip and the SoC. Maybe they'll do some custom, onboarding and memory or the NPUs or whatever, some newfangled way to kind of cut down those thresholds and threads in between processing. But for at least the next two chips, they're just looking to optimize. And again, as David said, they're a software company, so they can do a lot with a little. We've seen them do a lot with just the tiny camera sensor through their image processing. So I'm assuming they can do a lot with what they kind of build into Android 16, 17, whatever going forward. So we'll keep an eye on that. Moving on to our next thing is something I think you want to start talking about, which is AI and Stardock.
Yes, I would love to jump into this. Let me preface this by saying I'm a big Stardock fan. They are a smallish company that produces software to customize Windows and, depending on your viewpoint, some ways to improve Windows. And they have came out with a product called DesktopGPT 1.0. So just to give you the rundown on what DesktopGPT 1.0 is, for the AI users out there, you've launched Copilot and you get a prompt with some basic ideas of what you can do if you're running the new version of Copilot. The older versions are just the prompt, and it's kind of a best of luck to you type of thing. If you use Gemini, it's kind of a prompt and best of luck to you. And if you use ChatGPT directly, it is absolutely a prompt and best of luck to you. You kind of have to type in and see where it leads you. Well, what Stardock has done with their Desktop GPT 1.0, it is an app that runs on your Windows PC. That when you open the app, it gives you some ideas of what you can ask AI to do for you. It kind of leads the consumer down that road and goes, oh, this looks interesting. Let me ask it this. Let me ask it that. And when I first picked up the product, I was talking to the VP over there, Brad Sams. I says, is this full AI or is this partial AI or is this some hybrid in between? What are we working with here? And with Desktop GPT, up in the top right hand corner, you can choose your various language models. Your smaller language models for more direct queries, your larger language models for more of a broader experience. So what I found interesting in this was you can build templates, and they do give you some sample templates to follow. You can edit the sample templates. If there's something you want AI to do for you every day, you can go in, run your template, get your response. That's a daily thing. And the user interface is very simple to use. When you're using the user interface, there's a few screenshots on our post about this. You've got the shortcuts where you can see them. The shortcuts tell you what you're doing. The shortcuts offer you ways to interact with your AI query. This is what we need, I think. I think stuff like this might be what gets AI off the ground in the consumer space. Now, to give Apple a little bit of credit here, I'm sure as time goes, they're going to dress up Apple Intelligence and kind of try to make it more consumer friendly. But at least what we're seeing here in Windows with Desktop GPT is a start, and it's not just some prompt with no guidance. I've always felt like AI was like dropping a kid off at the zoo with no signs, going, okay, hope you don't get ran over by a lion. Well, which way's the lion? I don't know. So I feel like, Desktop GPT kind of makes that a little easier for the consumer.
Yeah, I think we are getting into a refinement phase of AI, despite not having a solid use case scenario for it. And I think maybe we're trying to find that along the way as we refine this. And I think that's part of the effort with Microsoft. I think again they overshot, which is what they constantly do. They overshoot in one direction, change over to window, and then recalibrate again to the exact opposite. They gave us a ton of power and robust functionality with Copilot, and then realized that the user experience wasn't that great. And then they pared it all back without figuring out a way to keep the functionality. So we were experiencing this new version of Copilot, which is supposed to be a little friendlier. It gives you, like you said, it gives you prompts and gives you kind of direction on what you can do with it. Now, I think that this Stardock thing is taking that a step further. And I think there are other companies. I forget the name of the guy who is now head of Microsoft's AI or whatever. The startup company he had, they've been doing some really good things with kind of making the user interface more welcoming, more friendly, and kind of giving people an idea of what AI or at least pre-generative AI can do. And I suspect Gemini is going to follow suit. Whatever Amazon comes out with will be another step forward. We're going to start seeing people at least know the basics of what they can do. Right now, we're all trying to force our search behavior, our online web-based search behavior from Google that we've all been trained over the last 10, 15 years to do into these prompts. When there's so much other things we can do and so many other ways to go about addressing this. So we're just going to need companies to, slow walk us through that process. And I applaud Stardock for doing this. I hope they get their entire base, and then their entire base can get other people to be like, hey, here's what we should at least ask from the big guys as well. Moving on to our next topic, we got Windows 11 Mail. Again, we are a Microsoft podcast. We have to talk about Microsoft stuff. And here's one of the things. I don't know who this pertains to. If you are that one listener, that one viewer who's out there, consider this a heads up and a warning to you. If you're still using Windows Mail, Calendar, or People app, stop it. Get some help. Stop using it because Microsoft's going to cut you off anyway. As of December 31st, 2024, the Windows Mail and Calendar app, which resides in both Windows 11 and Windows 10, and the People app, and I believe actually it may even go back further. I think it's Windows 8 when these things were first introduced. They will cease to have support or even work as a function. Normally, Microsoft cuts off support and says, you know what, you're on your own security-wise, but the functionality of this will still work. That won't be the case for these apps. You will not be able to send, read, or communicate through the Mail app. And I don't think your calendar contacts will sync across the People portion of that or the calendar portion. So don't start, if you have any meetings beyond December 31st, you won't know when or if those are been updated or changed. So that is what Microsoft's saying. They will offer license-based support or license-based Outlook support until 2029, which that typically means or references Outlook Exchange or the Outlook apps for Office 365. But as many of you know, Microsoft's trying to transition those apps into this web-based or the progressive web app that they use for the new Outlook. It's somewhat feature lacking compared to Exchange, but definitely has more features than the Mail and Calendar and People's app on Windows 10 and 11. So bottom line is, if you're still using those old apps, try and transition to the new Outlook web app. If you still don't like it, go to using Google. Thunderbird, I believe, is an option. There are plenty of mail clients out there, but do it before the end of this year, please.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, there's probably more people that I'm gonna phrase that a little differently. I think there's more people out there that use this app probably than we realize, because having done some tech support before and remote desktops and seeing what people use, when people buy a PC, especially our older generation, they expect all their necessary services to be on that PC. So the first thing they're going to do, I have seen this many, many, many times, they're going to sign in with that Microsoft account. They're going to click Windows Mail. Oh, look, it's already populated. That's my email address. And as long as Windows behaves, their mail behaves. They're happy. That's why they don't even change the signature line. That's why you get sent with the Windows 10 or Windows 11 mail client at the bottom. And I feel bad for these people. One, I have seen on one of my Snapdragon PCs where Microsoft has removed the Windows Mail. It is Outlook now, but I hate to tell you, it is still Windows Mail. In behavior, in function, it's just an icon change, a branding change. It's pretty much the same thing. So maybe that'll help some people, but I think Microsoft is going to have to force it, and I hope there's a way to make it smooth to where somebody gets a Windows update or gets put in a situation where they have to update, and they click the Microsoft Go button, and when they reboot or the window, the update is done, the icon is down there. And I think that's going to confuse some people, because people get caught up into what those icons look like. I'm not talking about people that are mine and your level now. I'm talking the average consumer.
Well, I think you might remember, I want to say last year, or maybe it was earlier this year, they tried that. And people like you and I got upset with it. I don't know if you remember when they had the mail app and it was the same mail icon. And when you clicked on it, it would give you the introduction. And I think they're going to have to go back to this, unfortunately. And it's a bit of confusion, admittedly, for everybody involved, for pro users and novices alike, because you're going to click the mail icon, that old Windows 10 mail icon, and get the new interface. But you get a prompt before that saying, "Hey, mail is turned into this." Now, I don't know, to the people that you're talking about, the people that we're discussing here who don't understand that. They just know that there's a built-in mail client. If they will go with that, if they'll say, "All right, well, you told me that the thing that I used to use is now this thing," and get used to the new UI. It's the standard email. Like, you have a column over to the left that will showcase all your emails with a little bit of context underneath, and folder structures, not too dissimilar from the mail app. And then you'll have a big reading pane off to the right side. That's what Outlook will still look like to them. Now, whether or not they can navigate it the same way that they used to with the mail app will be up to them. But ideally, as you said, to your point, forcing people, that's, I think, the only path Microsoft has going forward, is saying, "Hey, we're going to keep that old icon until the 29th, or maybe a few weeks after the 29th. Whenever you click on it, you get the new interface that will then change the icon to the new Outlook. So wherever you have it pinned, saved in your start menu, or if it's on your desktop, that new icon is now in place of the old mail one." So you'll get used to that. Like, all right, well, wherever I used to, but most of them we go to, that thing is now there. And it told me up front, this is the new experience. Again, if you like it after that, stick with it. If you don't, hey, bounce off to Google, bounce off to Thunderbird, bounce off to whatever third-party mail client you're using. But anyway, everyone, you have till the 29th as consumers. Those of you in businesses, your IT guy has until 2029 to figure out what to do with you. So best of luck. We're going to move on to something a little more fun, but also a change, potentially. And that is us potentially getting a Microsoft handheld. You brought up the story.
Yep, we might be getting a handheld. But let me kind of temper the expectations here.
No. I'm excited. So you're telling me this Christmas I can go pick up a handheld. Is that what we're saying?
That's exactly what I'm not telling. This week, Phil Spencer sat down with Bloomberg and gave kind of an update interview about where Microsoft is and what Microsoft's plans are. And he kind of danced around the concept of a potential Microsoft handheld. And he admitted that he was interested, that he had used handhelds that are out there, and that Microsoft was tinkering with ideas. But he quickly backtracked and said, no, you won't be picking one up this Christmas, unfortunately, and didn't know when or if you would be picking up a Microsoft branded handheld in the future. He did not dismiss the idea either. His focus right now, he admitted that the Microsoft Xbox app is good, but not great, and needed some improvement on the existing handheld devices that are out there. He did highlight that we know Nintendo Switch is the largest selling handheld at this point, so he does believe there is a market for handheld, but Microsoft just isn't ready to commit to that. I think what Microsoft is looking for is a paintbrush type approach of a broad experience. And this kind of teeters onto something that my buddy here wrote up for us this week. Microsoft wants titles on screens. Those screens don't have to be handheld screens. Those screens don't have to be your television, your computer monitor. They want you to be able to play everywhere. So the fact that Phil Spencer does not commit to hardware, even though he admits interest and recognizes that Nintendo Switch is the largest selling handheld ever, that tells me they're thinking more of the software experience. And does this mean a change in the hardware world? I'm going to drop it there and let my buddy get in, because this is one of those rabbit holes that we could dig to the next continent and still be talking. So I'm going to drop it there and ask my buddy, what does he think about the future of the handheld, and what does he think Microsoft is going to do for hardware options?
I think Microsoft's going to do what Microsoft did with the Surface, so to speak. He's letting partners create experiences, and then they are reading and ingesting the feedback from it. He did mention that they're making prototypes. So they are tinkering around somewhere in the Surface Labs, probably with a version of a handheld, several versions of handhelds. And they are probably taking the feedback that we're giving about the Asus, the NVIDIA Shield, the Lenovo Legion, and what's the other one? There's another one, a fourth one I can't think of. And whatever else Nintendo's going to do with the Switch 2, I believe. And they are working in the labs to kind of create something towards that. I think what he's saying now, though, is that they won't have something ready that is, cost effective, battery performance, and, have enough memory and all the feature sets that gamers are asking for as far as technology is concerned. Like the chip's small enough to do that stuff, the screens, malleable enough to make different sizes and stuff like that. They don't have that yet. So he's saying what we're going to focus on is what they have control over, the software. And that software will help determine what the partners can do as far as experiences. Again, for the next version of the Asus, for the next version of the Lenovo Legion, for the next version of, I think Steam uses its own software. That determines what buttons you put on the handheld. You may not need a mouse cursor pad if we're never going to go into the OS version of Windows on these devices. If you're only going to be given the Xbox experience, then you can get rid of the cursor pad or whatever necessarily, maybe. So then you don't make hardware with that on there. So I think again he's working on what they can improve, which is the Xbox experience. And you and I have said this beforehand. That is of the utmost importance because this is why the NVIDIA Shield is doing, or is it Steam? NVIDIA Shield has its own operating system, or is it the Steam Deck?
Steam Deck.
Why the Steam Deck is doing so well is because of its user experience. The games are all, the games are the PC games across the board. You're playing the same games, but how you get into those games, the way you adjust the settings and things like that, if it's as easy as sitting down on the couch for a lot of people, then they will go out and do that. Same thing for Nintendo Switch. Like you make it almost foolproof, and people will play and they will adopt it. So Microsoft needs to work on the Xbox experience. I think it's one of the big steps was when they did the I think it's handheld mode for Xbox Xbox app. I think as far as a handheld coming out, I do believe Microsoft will have their own version of one, and I think that will be the exclamation point on the end of the console for them. Mm-hmm. Because what they can do is they can easily, and we'll get into this in a little bit about this, our last story about where Xbox goes in the future, but they can pivot from making the sit-at-home console device that has, that sucks up a lot of air, makes a lot of noise, can only be stationed and positioned in one area, hard to travel with, to this handheld that it runs like a PC that can be connected to, docked to, wirelessly transmit to a TV and go with everybody. And that will be the future of their device. They will say, hey, you know what, going forward, we no longer make an Xbox console. We make this handheld that if you take the little controllers off the side of it and put it down next, just the same way that the Switch does, you put it down next to your TV, that powers your Xbox. You can take that thing with you, put it in your backpack, go to work, travel, and you get the Xbox experience with that thing on there. So I believe that's what they're making their handheld probably to replace. And that'll be at the earliest, if I'm predicting, I'm throwing some numbers out there, 4 years from now. We're in the middle of our console generation for the Xbox Series. I think if they're going to put the exclamation point on this, it'll be at the end of this one when they say, all right, we didn't make an Xbox Series 2. We made this handheld instead. And that's going to be our next console.
Do you think it takes them that long to get there?
I think it might even take them longer. They might even let PlayStation come out with a PlayStation 6. What are we at, 5 now? PlayStation 6.
Yeah, well, we're at the 5 Pro. That's that $800 beast.
We'll say this. I think they may even say we're going to sit out the PlayStation 6 for the first couple of years, and they're going to run away with it. But in the 2 years after that thing has come out, here's our handheld, and that is our console. It'll be worth it for them.
So by then, what we're hoping for, and we've kind of seen hints from it from AMD, because as we know that the handhelds now are AMD driven.
Correct.
Paul Thurrott said something interesting. Is Microsoft waiting to throw ARM into this deal? Are they waiting to see how good and how efficient ARM can be to say, hey, here is your Xbox power-wise equivalent in a handheld that gets you 10, 15 hours of battery life?
I would have said at the beginning of the year, probably. We know that ARM and Snapdragon are kind of in an issue
arguing.
Right
now. Yeah,
they're arguing. And they I think we're 40 days into revoking the license officially. We'll see what the courts say, but they may be waiting to see how that plays out because you don't want to invest in something that can't be distributed. So I'm sure they have prototypes. They've been testing it out. They've probably made a couple versions with the chip, and they're saying, whenever you guys sort out your legal battle, we will run with it or we'll shelve it. And again, AMD is creating this crazy GPU for their chip, and we've always used AMD. So this, we're running both. We'll make both. We'll test both. But we know that AMD, no matter what, will have the clearance. We'll have the runway to keep going because they're not in a legal battle. If we can flip on the dime and put in the ARM chip to save on venting and cooling and get more longer battery life out of these devices, we'll flip that chip in there whenever we can. But until then, AMD is our guy. We're testing it with you guys. Figure out your legal battles, and we'll proceed from there. Maybe the plan was to come out with the AMD version and then say, here's the light version, like the same way we had the Switch Lite or whatever, that like one that didn't have the controls that came off or whatever. It might just be a smaller version that doesn't need a vent, Maybe the screen is 1080p versus OLED or whatever they were deciding.
That's where I was fixing to go with this. Now, what about the gamer that likes the 4K 5.1 Dolby? There's I'm kind of taking a little side road here. There is a group on Facebook that I had recently joined where people build man caves and she sheds, and they customize them. And I have been specifically looking for gaming and Xbox ideas to see what people are doing with these devices. And there are more people out there than I realized that are putting up projectors. They're buying the 85-inch TVs, and they are building these, I call them gaming rooms. These gaming rooms that are just, they have to be an amazing experience just by looking at them and seeing the way they're set up and seeing the hardware that's put in them. So if Microsoft comes out with a handheld 1080p, 1440p device, I'm hoping that they can do something like the Steam Deck does with the Steam Deck dock, to where you can dock that in, and maybe by the time this comes out, there's enough horsepower to at least get 4K 60 out of it, so people can take advantage of these nice TVs and these surround sound systems that they have purchased.
I mean, the Lenovo Legion Go is my closest personal anecdotal experience with something like that. Like I said, it is a computer. It is a 8-inch computer that has controls on the side of it that you can take off. It has a kickstand so that you can prop this thing up and connect into it a USB or a Thunderbolt or whatever to get your 8K experience ported from the device. So if you're someone who has a setup, you have a projector, you have these large screens, or you want to, for whatever reason, have dual screens if you're playing some kind of split shooter or whatever, you can plug it in. I think the idea is to make that device, that gaming console, portable. Shrink all the stuff that you need down into that thing, and then again, make it on the go for people. So, putting a kind of period on this part of the topic, which we'll re-engage in the next couple of stories. Microsoft's idea is that we are going to move away from you having to have a dedicated tower area in your living room, a shelf on your your TV stand for that console. You could do away with all that, and whenever you want to use that, you could open up this 8-inch screen, put the kickstand behind it, because they love kickstands and everything, plug it in, and you get that experience if that's what you want. For the rest of us, we never use the kickstand. We just say, hey, I throw it in my backpack, I put it in my travel bag, I left it in the car or whatever, and I just pick it up and I start playing with it. I turn it on, the Xbox game app comes on just like it does on the Xbox, whatever. I'm into my game. I never use the kickstand. I never do any of that stuff. I plug in my headphones and I'm good to go. I'm playing as I would anywhere else. I'm playing on my microphone and stuff like that. I think that is where they're trying to figure out the sweet spot. But in the meantime, just never take this away from them. Work on the software. Make it a friendly user experience, and the rest of it will kind of work itself out. Our next topic is something that's been happening pretty big this week. We've had BlueSky reemerge as a Twitter replacement for at least 1 million users in the last 2 weeks. Numbers wise, I believe BlueSky reported about 2 million users increase since October 25th of this year. So they are up to about 15 million to begin with. For those of you who don't know what BlueSky is or unfamiliar with it, in the wake of, I believe, Elon buying Twitter /X, BlueSky was something that was co-created by, I believe, Jack Dorsey, who also originally created Twitter. And it was made as a decentralized. Its pitch was that it was a decentralized platform that would be basically a Twitter clone for people who wanted to use it. Now, the reason why we didn't hear about it mostly until now is because they had a very discreet buy-in on it. Like, you had to be invited. It was a long waiting period. The app wasn't on every platform. You didn't have a web version of this thing. It was built very selectively. And I think they thought they had time in order to nurture it. In the wake of the US elections here in the United States, as evident by the number of people who have left and the areas that they're coming from, which are at least looks like Europe, Canada, and the US. In the last 2 weeks, a lot of people have been fleeing X, and you can take it for whatever reasons they want to, but a lot of people have been leaving and they've been exploring BlueSky and Threads. And now, like I said, they are seeing massive activity to the point of, I believe last night their servers crashed, and this morning they were admitting that, hey, they are overwhelmed with the amount of people who are joining and kind of refinding each other back on this platform. What are your thoughts on this before I get into the specific numbers of both or all three platforms?
I'm happy to see this. I'm kind of in the social media burnout phase. I really am, for a variety of reasons. Be them political, be them not. I think BlueSky, I recently joined it this week when you and I started talking about it, and I have posted a couple things and kind of scrolled through and got a feel for the environment. And this reminds me very much of Twitter 1.0.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got that feel to it. So far, people are more friendly over there. They seem to be more laid back and more interactive, and you're not seeing, some of the other content that may get you a little upset on Twitter/X. And I hope, if it's Jack Dorsey that's running it, he knows how to do it. He built Twitter. He knows how to do it. I think, we're going to have to start seeing some advertisements because there's a server bill to pay. There's a bandwidth bill to pay. I'm okay with that. I was okay when Twitter first got advertisements. But I think you can't advertise everything. I think, the advertisements have to be controlled, have to be curated. Just because somebody's got money and wants to place an ad on your site doesn't mean you accept that money and you accept that ad. So if we can get back to what Twitter was 3 years ago, 4, I would be okay with that. So go for it, Mr. Dorsey. I hope you do well. And we will be on the platform making posts. In fact, you can find us on that platform already. We're already there making our daily posts there. You can find us on that platform, Microsoft Unboxed, MSFT Unboxed. Jump over there, give us a follow. And I hope this platform does well. It's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. Couple specifics. I believe Jack Dorsey actually, ironically, left last week. I don't know if he's just afraid of people or what, but I think he left BlueSky officially. So for those of you who aren't fans of Jack Dorsey, don't worry about that. He's no longer part of the project. I believe his co-founder and co-creator is still there. As far as advertising is concerned, the way that they plan to move forward going forward is to offer pro features to subscribers. I believe the idea is that they'll have a subscription model that will leave the bulk of the platform free for everyone else, but then you will get specific features as far as customization for your profile, different fonts, higher quality video uploads, so maybe 4K for some people, and longer video loads. So right now, I think 60 seconds is the limit for most people. So maybe if you have a subscription, you'll be able to post full episodes or longer form video content. So that's their plan going forward. We'll see how they implement it and how well that transitions. Just so we can kind of be realistic about the numbers. Again, BlueSky is at 15 million. Threads, which was also considered a Twitter safe haven or refuge for a lot of people, has 250 million users. They've been around for about 2 years now. They got a easy bump because they basically just moved everyone from Instagram over to this, so all your friends followed you and you didn't really have to set up anything. They are also seeing a surge of people. I believe they also got 50 million people in the last 2 months. So they are doing well, but they do not operate the same way that BlueSky does. Their algorithm is very curated as far as content is concerned, and the way that they kind of de-emphasize any political content on there, anything controversial, so to speak, that's kind of all kind of been algorithmed out. Plus, it's a it's not a chronological algorithm for a lot of people, and they're for whatever reason, their algorithm's a bit old. Like you'll see stuff that's been posted hours, if not days old in your feed. And again, I don't know if that's just based on the amount of people interacting with the platform. Because again, not a lot of people have it because they have Instagram, but not necessarily interacting in it. So, take it for what you will. Blue Sky is a little more up to the minute, kind of like that's how Twitter was. It also implements feeds, so to speak. So you can set up different hashtags and have those be your custom feeds on your page. You can scroll through the top. So if there's something like, say, you follow the San Francisco 49ers, which I do, you can find a custom feed for that, and that'll be an entire list for you to kind of explore. Same thing for people who were fans of Black Twitter. They can move over to BlueSky. They can just follow Black content creators. Or if you're a fan of tech, you can group those all together. These are some of the benefits that are being brought over from Twitter over to Blue Sky, which makes it a different competitor than Threads. But again, they're both kind of competing for the same thing. We'll see how kind of levels out in the end. Twitter, though, is not lacking for users. I think the last time they recorded, they were at 415 million users worldwide, with about 335.7 million were actively monthly users. Again, this was last month, so we'll see what the loss is at the end of the year, or at the end of the quarter officially. There are some advertisers who are talking about going back to Twitter in order to curry favor with Elon and the incoming presidential administration. I don't know who they're going to be advertising to, or if they're even following the news about everyone leaving. But we'll see. Again, we'll see how that works out. There are also news organizations, which I think makes the Blue Sky exodus a little more newsworthy than it was the first time around, is because people weren't actually leaving Twitter. They were exploring Blue Sky, but not leaving Twitter. People are now actively leaving Twitter and moving over to, and really The Guardian was one of the companies that said they can no longer advertise. Celebrities, I think, Jamie Lee Curtis and some other people are saying they've shut down and closed their Twitter accounts, and they moved over to Blue Sky or Threads. So there's something real happening, but we'll see what effect it has later on. Right now, we're kind of in the eye of the hurricane, so to speak. With that being said, we're going to move on to our last story, which is kind of an interesting one. It's Microsoft trying to rebrand the Xbox experience. I've been talking for a quick minute. I'm going to let you get in with just this part of the headline. I'm going to let you go chomp on this for a second. Microsoft is now saying that the Xbox branding, the Xbox experience, is multi-device and multi-screen. What are your thoughts on that?
It's better than it used to be. It's better than it used to be. I think, Microsoft still has a ways to go to get to the multi-screen, multi-device experience. I think, like I mentioned in the last headline, I think they're on their way. But I think they've got some things that they've got to get over, and they've got to figure out. Number one, I think there's an assumption that this is what gamers want. I think there's a lot of assumptions being made here. And I don't know, and maybe you do, how well the ROG Ally handheld devices are selling. They are very expensive devices. The new Ally X retails for $799, because I was doing some Christmas shopping this morning and took a look. It retails for $799. Now, I've got an Xbox Series X that I bought from Amazon on sale the other day. I caught it for $449. So we've got talk that people aren't happy with the PlayStation Pro being $7-ish, $800-ish bucks. We've got to find a way to make this affordable first. That people, that most people can get in to buy the handheld device. Now, I'm not referring to streaming. I'm referring to the device that people can load their games on and play. Now, for streaming, the affordable device, we have one, the Amazon Fire Stick. This was something that Microsoft and Xbox launched, what now, 2 or 3 months ago now, where you can get the Fire Stick combo or the 4K Fire Stick, and you can download the Xbox app and Bluetooth your controller to the Fire Stick and play. I think that was the way that Microsoft said, hey, we know how popular Fire Sticks are. Can we do this? What are the numbers? Because I don't think they have any interest in making their own streaming stick, even though that upsets a lot of gamers. I think they are in the business of putting the app on existing devices for gamers to access.
Okay.
I cut you off there. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to let some of our listeners know before my buddy David got a little lost in the sauce for this topic. I'm going to take a 30,000 foot view of this because what we're talking about, he's absolutely correct. We're going to get into the details of that in a second. But Microsoft's got a new campaign. No, nothing. I think I said, I think you got into like, here's the corner street and the details of this specific thing. I'm just taking a worldview map of what they're kind of doing currently.
Okay.
Microsoft earlier this week is issuing a new marketing initiative. And they're trying to rebrand the Xbox as no longer just being the Xbox Series X or the Xbox One or anything of that. It is a multi-device, multi-screen effort. And the way they're doing it is this new branding effort called "This is an Xbox." So you might start seeing these commercials, this advertisement on YouTube, on Twitch, in front of your next NFL game or the next NBA game or whatever. It's going to say, hey, what is an Xbox? And they're going to kind of define, and they're doing a little tongue in cheek. They're saying, hey, this is an Xbox, and they'll show you an Xbox. Or they'll say, this is an Xbox, and they'll show you a PC. And you'll be like, wait, what? And then they'll show you that this is a cat box. It's not an Xbox, kind of tongue in cheek. They'll show you that this is an Xbox, which is just a mounted TV. And you'll be like, what? And then they'll say, this is an Xbox, and they'll show you a smartphone. And then they'll show you that this is a bento box, which is not an Xbox. Again, tongue in cheek. They'll show you the streaming stick that you were just talking about, saying that this is an Xbox. They'll show you the Meta Quest, saying this is an Xbox. And then they'll show you the Xbox Series X and saying this is still an Xbox. The idea is that they're trying to redefine what an Xbox is, and it is no longer just the console that they sell. It includes PCs, Samsung Smart TVs, phones, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Meta Quest headsets, and all because all of these things are linked through the Game Pass subscription. We mentioned this in the last story that Microsoft, this idea of marketing this as Microsoft is now the Xbox game or the Game Pass subscription. It is no longer the isolated to the console. I believe cynically is an admission that they lost this generation. They lost last generation. And going forward, next generation, they may not win again because of the inherent ecosystem buy-in that everyone's already got with the PlayStation. It's just building and building upon itself. People bought a ton of PlayStation 4s, and then they told all their friends, next time around, buy a PlayStation 5. And then they did. And fewer people bought the Xbox in addition to the PlayStation. So each generation, they're going to keep losing because all their friends bought into an ecosystem. So Microsoft's saying, all right, we're going to pivot. You no longer need to buy our console. Get our subscription, and you can play it anywhere. They're admitting, like, hey, we probably won't win the next console war because of ecosystem buy-in, but we can start winning the idea of the Xbox subscription being everywhere, being the Netflix of gaming. And that's and they were going to partner with, I believe it's Porsche, Crocs, the Happy Egg Company, Samsung, to kind of promote these. Samsung's going to put it on their giant TV in Times Square, and the egg company's got their own branding stickers and stuff that they sell. Porsche and Croc will figure out a way to kind of market like, hey, the Crocs, they're not an Xbox, but you can wear Xbox branded Croc stuff. Again, the idea is just to say that the Xbox is moving away from its own console, which didn't do very well and is a loss leader for them, to the idea of a subscription and letting their partners kind of explain like, hey, if you want a game, you can game anywhere. And they're going to move further into this realm once they can figure out how to market their mobile store, and when they can start moving away from exclusivity, because again, that was always tied to the console. If they could just say any game that we have is available on any device, it starts to cut into Sony and Nintendo's own, marketing efforts of buy our console. It's gonna be like, well, why didn't you buy your console when I can just play practically any game I want on the smart TV? Do I need a Switch? Do I need a PlayStation 6? Or do I just need $30 a month to play that game on that, or on my PC when I leave the house, or on my phone when I'm on the subway? So I think that's what I meant about taking that long view. Back to your details.
Yep, and I do apologize. I did kind of dive right in there head first and went straight for the
handheld.
The handheld there, and that is my apologies. And I will follow up what you're talking about with. Kareem here has explained exactly why I do not own a PlayStation. I've never said PlayStation games were bad. I've never said Nintendo Switch games were bad. Their sales numbers prove that it's not bad. I'm an ecosystem guy. I love I'm going to be the Microsoft guy here for 30 seconds. I love to be able to sit down at any device and play whatever I want to play. I do not like the idea of having to buy a game on PlayStation, then turn right back around. Well, I want to try this on our, we're reviewers. We want to try it on a new super ultra wide screen. Well, now I've got to buy that game again because I owned it on PlayStation. PlayStation doesn't, they have, their cloud and stuff, but they don't have the ecosystem that Xbox does. And I think that's what Microsoft is trying to show you here. We have this thing called Game Pass. You buy it, you purchase it, you pay your subscription, and you get this broad ecosystem of ways to access your stuff, your content, connect with your friends, and you're not limited to the Sony PlayStation connected to a television, and that's your only experience. I find myself very often interacting with my friends in the Xbox app on a PC during the workday. I'll get a notification that somebody sent me a message. Okay, fire the app up, send them something back, or it's time to update something. Fire the app up, tap my Xbox icon, update my Xbox. That way, when I'm done for the day and I go sit down, my title's ready. And I think it goes back to Microsoft being a software and services company. And I think they're using this marketing to test those waters. What do people think of the idea of the experience anywhere? If people buy into it, then to your point, they slowly drift away from making the box that sits on the shelf in front of your television. And they shift more to the experiences. Because you better believe somebody in marketing and data analysis is watching every number of this. Because whether you're Sony, Xbox, or Nintendo, the next gaming move that is made, I think, starts the true next generation of gaming. This is what your kids will grow up knowing. This is what my nieces and nephews will grow up knowing. Because I remember when we first got our console, it was so cool to plug something to the TV and play games on the TV. That's what our generation got. Now this generation is going to play it anywhere. And if they start to buy into that, everybody's going to buy into that.
Well, yeah. I mean, just from your own experience you just mentioned, I make it analogous, and I'll close it with this. There are some of us who are old enough to remember that you could only talk in certain rooms in your house because of the length of the cord on your phone. There was a phone that was attached to a wall, probably maybe a kitchen counter, and the cord had to be extra long for you to allow you to go in your own room, maybe the living room, and maybe one other room. But you could not just call and talk anywhere you wanted to. Your conversations were being monitored by your parents because you can only go from the kitchen to maybe the hallway right around the corner. Now we have kids who can talk wherever they want, whenever they want, in any car, any device, any room, any house. They're on their phones, and they can't even fathom the idea. I showed my daughters, who were 7 and 8, that this was a phone in the house. And they're like, what is that thing that has a wire connected to it? That is going to be the console when you're saying we could only have our gaming rooms. Our gaming experiences were tied down to the specific gaming room that we had, and we couldn't go outside of that. We invited our friends over, and they all sat in that room with us and played that. We are slowly detaching ourselves from it. Now we can invite our friends online to sit in their own gaming rooms. And to your point, eventually we're going to be having those gaming experiences outside of those rooms. And that's where Microsoft wants to desperately run to, because that is where they have the advantage, because they are a software company. They are not necessarily the greatest hardware company.
I'm going to add one more cool thing to that some of our older viewers might recall, and I know you're going to. I can remember the console being in the bedroom because you had limited television. You had limited televisions in your house, and your parents didn't want to see, watch you play video games all the time. So your console went to the game room. So after school and on Saturdays and Sundays, you started piling chairs into that game room. Well, why were we doing that though? We were watching, we were playing, but we were also had multiple controllers connected to the consoles. We have moved away from even as many side-by-side person-to-person gaming experiences, and now those gaming experiences are online with most of the time people you've never met. You've never sat in that room. You've never spilled a Pepsi or Coke during the middle of a game on the carpet in the on the bedroom floor and had your mom running in to clean it up while you're trying to play the game, and everybody throwing their chairs, trying not to, make the mess larger. So I think this is pretty cool. And I just think this is the next, I don't want to say evolution, but it's the next step. I think evolution might be when we do this in VR. Maybe that's the evolution move, but I think this is the next step.
This is the next natural progression for Microsoft if it wants to stay in gaming. I honestly believe that. You have to get people away from the console because you're not winning it, you're constantly losing it. And I doubt that you're going to have even exclusive at this point that will bring people back to it. So pivoting this way makes sense for them. Again, it's cynical to not see it as an admission of loss, but it doesn't mean that they can't win somewhere else. And with that being said, where can people talk to you more about gaming or more about anything else, Microsoft-wise or other?
Please do. David PAJ1978. That is both on BlueSky now. That is on Twitter. I will at least check over there to see if anybody has, left me anything that needs a response. That is also on Threads. Now, I will say this. I would prefer you find me on Threads or BlueSky. I have slowly starting to back away from the Twitter X firestorm over there.
Yeah, I am at Happy Hulk on that's HAPPYHULK over at BlueSky. I am pretty active on there. I post a lot about Microsoft news, about comics as well. If we talk about that kind of stuff. I am also on Threads at just Kareem Anderson because it moved over from Instagram. I'm also very active there. I am not very active or active at all in the last 2 weeks on X. I turned off notifications on my phone. The app has been uninstalled. I may get an email, give me a list of notifications. If I don't get back to you in a timely manner, I apologize. It's because I am not actively getting information from them, but I will try and respond if I do get that. But as David said, try and find me on those places. I'm also on Instagram. And you can always find us every day at our website. So if you want to leave a comment there, we'll be checking those as well. But we want to thank you guys for joining us for another week of Microsoft News. We hope you guys have a great, happy, healthy week. Stay safe out there and try and enjoy your weekend.
Have a good weekend, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Saxophone plays out our routines.
we call